job when Christy Sports was ready to dive into digital, right? So one of the early comments made by someone who worked at Christy Sports, for 40 years said, I'm a brother from another mother, right? So I came into Christy Sports as a chief digital officer 2 years ago, but it was like I was family because I knew what working in a family-run ski shop at scale looked like. I knew what authenticity means and how important it is to the heritage and the DNA of everything they do. I knew how to fit a ski boot. I knew how to make a custom insole. I knew how to tune a ski. And I happened to know all this digital stuff. So it really set me up for success. And the embrace, if you will, that I received from that employee was incredibly important to the ability to influence change, which is really what, at the end of the day, what I've been asked to do for this 60-year-old family-run, Colorado marquee business. So passionate, yes. If there's anything I have too much of, it's too much passion. So yeah, I get asked this question a lot now. Like, you get older and people think you're wise and you made all these decisions. And the practical reality is, I knew who I was, and every time I let outside influence affect decision making, I was unhappy. So one of the best examples of that is I went and got my MBA. My undergraduate degree is in physical education, and it's not even to teach, it's adult fitness, which is kind of ironic seeing as we're at Gymshark. And I had no interest in working in a gym. But I loved being an athletic trainer in college, and it was the only way that the hours I put in taping ankles and traveling with sports teams and being an athletic trainer actually created any opportunity to graduate in any short period of time. So I went and got my MBA, and after I got my MBA, I had an opportunity to go to work for a company called Arthur Andersen, their Andersen Consulting division, which is now Accenture. And everybody and their mother says, oh my God, you have to go do that. Like, it's a ton of money. No one from our grad school gets to go there. Like, you got to do that. I was like, okay. So I ended up finding myself in a bank vault in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, writing C code. I had no idea how to write C code, but that's what Arthur Andersen Consulting did to you. And I was miserable, obviously. So I quit, right? And I went back to the ski shop for a little bit, and then, good things happened. But anyway, in retrospect, yeah, I followed my passion, I followed my heart, I followed my intuition. But the practical reality is the time at GSI when I went from buyer to technologist, I learned that I'm really good with data and architecture, and that there's this concept of architecture outside of building buildings. And that's really what's guided the decision-making process going forward. Like, I'm really good at it. There's industries that value it, and stay committed to it. So, and if you can do it, doing things that are fun, Crocs, I've done work for Timberland, obviously a company that, like our clients at Demandware were incredible. And now at Christy Sports, it's why not have fun while you're doing it?
So we're going to get into the data. But we're going to get into the data. Hard-hitting question that everyone
So I can't not say hot dog because I was born in the 60s, right? And I was a kid in the 80s, and it was the first movie I ever went to that there was nudity, and my parents were sitting right next to me. The best part is my parents were divorced. I went with my mom to see it, and then my dad took me to see it in Vail when I was like 16 years old, and he was like, "Your mom took you to see this?" But anyway, that I'm a ski racer, so the fact that it was freestyle is irrelevant. It's just to see a movie about something you're so passionate about in like a movie theater is a pretty big deal. I want my $2.
Or hot tub time. Come on. So, all right. So let's get into it. I've had to pretty much step into a role that didn't actually exist. Got a lot of marketers in the room talking to established companies. This so talk to me, a 60-year-old company, not the historic or digital. How did you do that?
So the first thing, and I said the word earlier, is it has to be authentic. And at the end of the day, the change has to come from within. What's the mic? You've got to approach it with that authenticity. If you don't have it, you need to partner with people that do, related to whatever it is, the core mission. You need to connect with people, and you need to stay committed to the vision or the strategy or the vision or whatever the highest or the North Star is, and literally champion for it, right, across the organization. And then you need to get focused on the data as fast as you can. Emotion is really hard to overcome. History is really hard to change, right? But data is data. And the more you can focus on the data and use the data to drive and explain the decision-making, the better. The challenge will be for an organization that is not used to data, right? Is used to a patriarch, let's call it what it is, right? In the ski industry, it's almost all patriarchs. So now they're all great grandfathers or great grandfathers that started these ski retailers, 50, 60 years ago during the ski boom in the 70s. They ran these things as passion projects for their family, right? It was their entire family risk. So everything was emotional, and it made sense and it worked for a lot of them. But to grow and scale and decentralize decision-making, you've got to focus on the data. And what's interesting and probably something I've learned over the last 2 years is how much becoming a teacher becomes critical. So the spreadsheet is awesome. You can email the spreadsheet to 1,000 people. If the 1,000 people have never gotten a spreadsheet before that has macros in it and pivot tables, and even if it did, it didn't matter because at the end of the day, it was what somebody said, no matter what the table said. Teaching them how to use that data to find the insight, to then define, to prove a hypothesis and then to execute, test and learn, and not fear failure is a time-consuming, emotional process. But you've got to be committed to the change of the people, because at the end of the day, an entity and organization, especially in retail where there's a lot of people, right? The beauty of vertically integrated branded manufacturers like Gymshark is you don't need as many people. But in physical brick and mortar, high degree service level retail, you need a ton of people, and those people touch a lot of customers, and you've got to bring them along, for the ride. And that's probably been the biggest challenge, but also the unlock is how to teach.
Does it work? Hey, not that I needed it. Interestingly enough, as you talk about data, and you talk about in-store, I noticed that you asked Ian from Anthropology a question about CRM tracking online versus in-store. Yes, you've got loyalty with the brand and with the stores. So talk to me about that challenge. Talk to me about CRM, how you're building that out, because I heard your question. What are the challenges that you're facing? Because I imagine there are others in the room that feel the same pain.
So just so it's level set, Christy Sports is private equity owned. If anybody's been in any private equity business before, data is really important. Numbers are really important. Predictable revenue is really important. And one of the keys for a retail business to get to predictability of revenue is customer lifetime value. And you need customer information. You need to identify transactions to the consumer to be able to do that. If you think about Christy Sports' business model, there's really two different business models that come together that neither of them are worth nearly as much independently as they are together. And it's our rental business, or what we call our services business, and our retail business, right? I joke, if anyone's ever been in ski or bike or skateboard or surfboard or any kind of fun activity that has hard goods involved in it, there's no money to be made in retail. It's a passion project. If you clear 10 points of EBITDA, you've done great. Move on to the next season. Hope it doesn't not snow. So in many ways, our rental business is a privilege to be a really awesome retailer, right? And what's really interesting is data capture on one half of our business is natural, because you can't rent equipment without giving us literally way more than just your name and your email address. We need your height, your weight, your date of birth. And that was awesome. And for 30 years, 40 years of operating history with that data on paper, in a box, in a warehouse that maybe was water damaged. So
intern.
And then the retail business, forget about it, right? It's the sales associate probably knows the name of the person they're selling to. They've been touching their feet for 2 hours trying to fit a ski boot, right? They know their name, but the system doesn't. And so creating that value out of data collection is really transformative. On our rental business, as the world has moved to advanced reservations, online experiences, Christy Sports did get a head start, in that digital transformation aspect of the business. But just to give you guys a sense on like what that meant, it meant that the form was printed out at the store when you got there. So you filled out all the information, you put it in a database, you got a piece, you got out your reservation confirmation. Operationally, as a company, it was a piece of paper printed out at the store to execute the return or the reservation. So we've digitally transformed that entire aspect of the business end to end. That data is captured. The great news is it's incredibly quick to accelerate it. And we've put in systems that allow us to capture the customer information at POS. Challenge is the associate, the consumer, and the expectations of capturing that data and the reward system for doing it. So I'm really curious about, obviously, loyalty programs. We've spent the last 8 months doing incredible amounts of research on what loyalty means, but most what loyalty means to our customers. And we went in with some strong hypotheses. Like, I did not want to be a bank. If anyone's ever put a loyalty program in that's points-based and rewards-based, like, you're basically becoming a bank and you're one step short of, you know, the guys out in Omaha and wherever, I forget Sydney, right? Sydney, that literally, like, their retail businesses are banking. They are a bank because they issue credit cards because they have loyalty points. And, you know, we learned a ton from that. And, you know, we'll use that going forward as it relates to what our consumer wants and how they want to be rewarded. But then we have the challenge of, we're a ski shop that sells really, really expensive patio furniture where we're not selling skis and snowboards. Who buys expensive patio furniture more than like twice in their life? And how often do you buy new ski boots or snowboard? So getting information that's cyclical, that repetitive, it's just taking time. We're also in the process of going through what we call a four-season step change. So we want to be a year-round outdoor retailer. We want to be relevant to you. People are so passionate about the Christy brand. They love doing business with us, and we make it really hard for them to do business with us, except for once a year. So how can we change that? And all of these things, in essence, can be accelerated, can be invested in more quickly, can drive better value as we get more predictable. And that's where that data capture, data collection comes in so handy. And it's not just, you know, the tools. We've spent a year and a half putting in awesome tools. We've got Salesforce, we've got, you know, CDP, DMP, we've got third parties, algorithms to run data cleansing and all these things. And it's all great. If you don't capture the data at POS, it doesn't matter. So that's where the human behavior change comes in. And the balance between, you know, and this is really interesting, right? When the systems were put in place, and some of them were put in place before the team that we now have in place was in place, it was, we're going to put a system in place and it's going to require the sales associate when ringing someone out to get their name and email address. And you can't check out without your email address. How many no at no.coms do you think we got in the first 6 months? Right? Like, that isn't, the technology is awesome, but it is not going to change the behavior. How do I make it so the consumer wants to give me their data? How do I make it so that the sales associate doesn't have to feel the burden of collecting that data? And how do we do it, you know, seamlessly without material and without the material effort, right? And that's really the journey we're on. And it's really fun because when people did this 10, 20 years ago, you didn't have awesome technology that was on the cloud, that was relatively easy, you know, low barrier to entry. You had to spend millions of dollars to put IBM servers behind a firewall on an IT organization. Like, you know, VF is a great example with their old IBM infrastructure on certain things. And now it's just so much easier that it really does unlock the business to find the root cause, which is the human behavior aspect of it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. First of all, I love all of that.
I hope you guys do.
And yeah, the combined components of the in-store versus the online. So you've had to build out an entirely new team handling everything that you just captured. When you talk about recruiting, retention, empowering those people to really bring their best, what is it that you're looking for?
NCAA Division I athletes. Not joking.
Yeah, not
joking. So I've had the honor of working for a lot of early stage companies and building teams, and I've learned a lot through that process. Hiring to trust is like number one. And if I think about what I'm looking for and how I'm recruiting people, it is very much a, you know, I don't want to say first impression, but relatively first impression. Do I feel like I can trust this person? And do they have the skills or the experiences maybe not have the history, maybe they didn't do it before, but there's something about their history, what they've done before, that allows me to feel that I can trust them. And that's where the Division I athlete thing comes in place. And now that I have a 17-year-old that really wants to be a Division I athlete, so it's a little different. It hits home a little differently. But 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when I started putting these two things together, something about Division I athletes generally, and again, I'm talking generalistically, they made sacrifices in their life about a passion and a commitment to some sort of metric, some sort of outcome. And that's really, really important. The goal, and call it goal focus. So 1,000 ways to do it. And it's not just Division I athletes. Obviously, there are ballet dancers that probably have a similar attribute, chess players, musicians. There's a whole slew of things, but it's that commitment to an outcome or a purpose that's really important. The next one is, and it's cliche, it was said before, willingness to fail. And I love that Heather brought that quote. She knows no one failed greater than me. And failure is absolutely a part of success. And I hate the fact that failure is a part of success. No, success is a result of failure, right? Let's call it what it is. And that willingness to take risks, that willingness to, ego, whatever you want to call it, but that absolute real buy-in to failure is really critical. And then the last one, and this one's emerged over the last couple of years, especially as it relates to this pace of change, is this concept of ambiguity. And anyone that's ever seen a job description that I've written the last couple of years, you'll see it. Is this comfort with ambiguity. If you actually are coming to work for me and you're expecting your job description to define what it is you do, and you won't do anything that's not written on your job description, or you think your job description is something that's handed to you, then it's not going to work. The job I have at Christy Sports, in essence, I wrote the job description. The job I had at Crocs, in essence, I wrote the job description. It goes back. So people's willingness to own their job, own value creation, and be willing to make changes, take risks, take sacrifice, but find value, find a goal, and try to achieve it is bingo spot on. Probably doesn't work in larger enterprises. Maybe the fact I work for Arthur Andersen Consulting kind of jaded me in that way. But yeah.
You know what though? Everybody's had a crappy job. And Arthur Andersen, we can compare war stories. My wife worked there. That was a crappy job. You quit. The results of that crappy job and what you learned there have, led you to where you are today. So,
and I can say I typed C code, which people get impressed with, even though I had no idea what I was doing.
That is pretty impressive. So, you've built this internal team. There's a debate going on. It was a large part of Advertising Week in New York. This discussion around bringing things in-house versus working with outside vendors, subject matter experts, agencies, if you will. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I appreciate you asking that question, even though I knew you were going to ask it. And I'm sure our friends at Gymshark are going through this, right? You can't hire everybody at once to do all the jobs that need to be done. You've got to figure out what you want to insource, what you want to be known for, and where you want to lean on partners. And there's really two axes on this one. First is, as I said, what do you want to be known for? One of the mantras at Christy Sports is we are known for our in-store experience. We want to be known for our experience, regardless of channel. So that really dictated some things around customer experience, user experience, wireframing, whatever you want to call it, that prioritize that as a core DNA of who we are. Just like to have that experience in store, we have to have incredible sales associates on the floor. To have incredible experiences digitally, you better have really good UX and it better be core to your process. So that was a very early decision. Not all businesses do that. A lot of them go outside to agencies. The other one was I knew that getting to predictive analytics, data-driven decision-making was going to be critical. So investment in performance marketing, right? I want to be able to justify at some level every dollar I spend. Christy Sports' background were mass media advertising with some digital, but mostly mass media advertising. And what good looked like is when people said, "Oh, I saw our ad on 9 News after Kyle Clark," right? Like that was the measurement of good. And that's one axis of good. But how many people came in, right? Or how many people clicked. So performance marketing at the leadership level has been another critical important one. And then probably the last one really for us has been around this construct of go-to-market, like what we want to be known for in the consumer's eyes, what the offer is, the message has been another area of material focus. That leaves a lot of stuff where it's not. And what's interesting around that is one of the first places we've leaned in probably the most heavily is on the concept of algorithms, data science, data math, like doing the number crunching. There's not a lot of differentiation for Christy Sports. We probably couldn't hire the best data scientists unless they happen to be a ski bum, and that's a high risk proposition. And if we got them, the likelihood of retaining them in this market was low because they'd realize they could make twice as much money working for an agency, right? Being billed out at $200-300 an hour.
Maybe if you hook them up with some edibles, like
maybe. So that's an area. There's a lot of production stuff that we've outsourced over time for video production, photography. On the development side, some of it we outsource. Some of what we more insource is more the what we want to do, what we want it to say, how we want it to work, but maybe the actual hands on a keyboard coding a change, some of that's been outsourced. And then like every business, right, you can't scale the execution of digital marketing. So we've really tried to focus on the right digital marketing agency partner to help us with AdWords and retargeting and affiliate and all these areas, but do it in cost-effective ways. Now, we also had no scale. Like when I started 2.5 years ago, e-commerce was less than 2% of sales. So there wasn't a lot of business to like even use. Now, as you get bigger, there's more dollars, there's more value. So now it's a matter of incrementally growing. And again, as a PE-owned company, in a way that costs are less than revenue growth.
Yep. You're bringing up a subject that's close to my heart, performance, really driving efficient revenue based on the investment that you make. So another big debate going on in the marketplace is around attribution and assessing proper value of media purchased. So there are tools like which we heard about today. There's MTA, there's financial applications. There are all these different models. So what do you make of them? You've been in the business a long time. You're clearly an analytics guy. Give us the goods.
So I'm glad I made you believe that. So I'm somewhat envious of 50% e-commerce with a closed data capture and high degrees of data capture at POS because it makes it easier to answer the questions. The reality is we're still 95% or more or less revenue through stores. And yes, a lot of that is rental, but the vast majority of our transactions are still unidentifiable, untrackable. What I do is I myopically focus on ad to sales because I don't care what channel, I don't care what category, I don't care what season, because I know it's all MTA in nature. I've got to hit the metric of ad to sales ratio. How I have confidence in that number is that at the campaign level, the team knows exactly what that campaign is. They exactly know what the KPIs for that campaign are. And I trust them and that they're committed to delivering the result. And if they don't see it, they'll make changes. It doesn't work if I don't do that, right? The interesting thing, as PE owned, trust is hard to get if I don't see the numbers, especially in a PE organization where every other portco that's consumer facing is 100% vertically integrated. Their only channel is e-commerce and everything's data captured. So this concept of advertising influence over time and untraceability is really hard. So how do I get them on board is show them exactly what I know, get them into the details of the campaign level to learn the trust, because ultimately it's about the portfolio at the end of the period. Was it successful or not? I can't manage that. What I can manage are the campaigns, the people who execute the campaigns, and the process by which they operate. Some campaigns are, we literally, like if you think about our patio furniture business, right? We don't sell it online. We don't deliver it. We deliver it. We don't ship it. And you got to be in Colorado or Utah. The internet's a big place. Our rental customers are from all over the world. Like it just doesn't work. So our advertising campaigns around patio, one of the major ones is Google AdWords, right? And Google local stuff with Google. It's about getting them to click to call the store, or just like get the address and show up, right? Like that's what good looks like. How do I measure ROAS on you showed up at the store because you found our location because it was both well indexed naturally or organically, and we had some paid postings going on. So it gets really complicated. Whereas, someone searches Breckenridge ski rental, like at the end of the day, that's like bottom of the funnel, last click, buy the ROAS. It's really high margin business, and don't let somebody else win that sale. So it's very different.
All right. We're running a little short of time, and I want to make sure that I give ample time because you are clearly fantastic. We've got some young marketers in the room. What advice do you have for them? You've been in the business a long time. Starting out now with technology the way that it is and everything changing, what do you got for these folks?
I guess two things. One, find people that inspire you as it relates to, a mentor, and like there's the words like mentors, whatever, but find people that inspire you, and I don't want to say follow them, but connect with them, either directly through working with them, through connections on LinkedIn, through attending an event they might be at, but get inspired, because especially in, I'll say, all the stuff that's going on, like quiet quitting, whatever you want to call it, right? Like to me, it's, and maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. I like to think not, but inspiration, crosses generations, entrepreneurs cross generations, businesses get started and founded and grow, across generations. Those things won't change. The difference is inspiration, right? What inspires everyone is different. It might be that you ski. It might be that you love growing things. You like to see results. You like to build things. I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, figure out what inspires you. And the second one is when your gut tells you no, listen to it. Don't let the numbers, right? The car, the badge, the logo, whatever, override how you feel intrinsically. And maybe this is a unique thing being a guy from Jersey, worked in New York for a while. Like I live in Colorado now. I choose to live here. It's more a Colorado thing. I don't know. But don't let it sit there, and don't be afraid to move. I guess the last one is don't be afraid to move on. Short little story. So when I left Crocs, I was convinced that I couldn't help build another team again. Like I just done it too many times. It was, non-competes, COVID, just, you couldn't do it. And it's incredible how many more amazing people there are in the world that you just haven't met yet. You haven't been networked to help build the next team. And that's really kind of, one of the things that, someone asked earlier, I think that the Gymshark team, why you go to work, why do you wake up, why do you go to work? And, there are a bunch of them here, but I'm not saying it because they're here. It's that team. I'm so committed to that team being successful at this point. That's why I'm still here.
And I noticed that some of them are here, so way to kiss your team's butt. And I love that the data-driven decision-making stuff ended with trust your gut. So just goes to show you there's always art and science behind everything that we do as marketers. So now I want to definitely open it up to questions in the audience if you folks have them.
Wow.
Done
You guys
hearing my
crushed
voice.
it. Awesome. Well, thank you both. Oh, we have a question.
Payback.
So, that'd be awesome. But I wonder if you can talk about what I thought was super interesting was he talked about the seasonality of buy to own ski versus rent to use versus rent to season versus patio versus the other products, and that you have a different seasonality, so different peaks for different product lines. And I'm interested from your perspective on the digital side of things. How do you start to think one, how do you build that? Obviously you have sales data, but then how do you build that on a customer level so you're peaking multiple times, but you're building interest in one product line while seeing sort of declining interest in the other?
So I'd say that the biggest opportunity we have is we have passionate relationships with 1.5 million people, right? We transact with them in one season historically, right? About 25,000 of those people transact with us in the other season, right? And they do it every 5 to 10 years, right? Our patio business, think of it more as like a convenient cash flow business model from real estate. It is not strategic in that regard from a customer data. The key for us is not trying to figure out as much so how to get them to come back every year. Like we got that now. How do I become more relevant to them the other 9 months of the year outside of their purchase cycle? What is it that their interests are in? Where physically are they? And how do I transact with them in other categories? And I said that earlier about that 4-season construct of being an outdoor retailer. How do I change that mindset without diluting who we are in the winter? So I don't know if I answered the question directly, but the focus is not so much on the history and behavior in the past. It's more an issue of what about the past data can I use with third-party data to project what they could become in a year-round multi-season, multi-touch customer, because they're all buying bikes, fishing gear, hiking gear, camping gear. They all own Yeti, right? Yeti cooler, Yeti mug. They probably didn't buy it from us in the middle of the summer because they came into our store and saw it, you know, $10,000 patio set.